C'è un momento in cui le idee non restano più chiuse nei libri, un istante in cui i numeri diventano volti e le parole diventano azioni. Benvenuto a Renaissance in Economics, l'evento dove la ricerca economica civile prende forma, diventa dialogo, visione, futuro. Qui tu sei protagonista, nel pensare, nel proporre, nel condividere un'economia nuova, perché ogni rinascimento nasce da chi crede che sia possibile. Renaissance in Economics 2025, dove l'economia incontra la dignità, dove il futuro si costruisce insieme.
What to say? Welcome. First of all, I would like to say you welcome. I'm very happy that you are here with us to start this second conference in Renaissance in Economics, a Manifesto for a New Economy. This is a fantastic days, there are two, and I'm so pleased that you are all here with us. Many people are coming and arriving to this town of Renaissance to speak about how to rethink economics, how to have a more human and sustainable perspective. So I'm so pleased to have all of you here. And well, just to remind you a few things about this event. This event is the second event that was formed by a group of Italian economists. These Italian economists wanted to have in their heart the well-being of people, the well-being of nature as well. And so we decided with Becchetti, Leonardo, and many others to think about a manifesto, to say a few things where everybody, I think, could agree. And these few points, 5, are very relevant. At the beginning, we thought few people will follow these, but then we realized that 350 Italian economists signed it, and then many people were interested. They were very interested also abroad. Indeed, it's an international conference. So we decided to have the first conference in Perugia. It was very successful, very interesting, and I hope this one would be as successful as the one in Perugia. And the other thing is that a lot of interest is coming out of these idea and points. People come because they feel we can have better opportunities and we can give better. And also our discipline has to be challenged by this perspective. Then a few things about very little about the timing. It's very important to maintain the timing. The conference is a fantastic event, but at the same time, it has some timing that we should respect. Another thing is that you have already been informed that there is a channel that you can use through the headphone to have the translation from Italian into English or from English into Italian. So what to say? On my side, there is our magnificent rector, Professor Petrucci, Alessandra. She is someone that always has supported these ideas of sustainability, of well-being. Well, indeed, she is a social statistician, and she knows very well what means deprivation about. And she, I remember, she wrote a very interesting book with Patrizia Romei many years ago, talking about these things. So it's something that is not here for, is here because she's really believing what we are doing all together with you. And then we have, so thank you for Alessandra for being here. The other important guest is our Vice Mayor of Florence, Paola Galgani. And she is also very much interested in inclusion and in sustainability issues. Indeed, she has also this important area of work. So what to add, Luca? What to add, Leonardo? We are so happy that you are here, and I think I will give the floor to our rector and to the vice mayor. Thank you very much to everybody.
Allora, buongiorno a tutte e a tutti e un saluto dall'Università di Firenze, come giustamente Mario Biggeri, che ringrazio molto, ha introdotto. L'Università di Firenze è veramente molto onorata di poter ospitare questa manifestazione. Ringrazio ovviamente tutti coloro che hanno lavorato per organizzarla e per fare in modo che tutto questo fosse realizzato. Prima di tutto, come è già stato detto, questo è il secondo appuntamento, un secondo appuntamento che avviene anche a pochi mesi dal Festival dell'Economia Civile. E in quell'occasione, appunto, sono stati individuati alcuni temi di particolare rilevanza che volevano in qualche maniera sottolineare l'importanza della sostenibilità intesa come il benessere, la qualità della vita per le persone, per i cittadini. E in particolare erano stati sottolineati alcuni temi di particolare rilevanza, come la decentralizzazione delle decisioni nel nome appunto della democrazia, della trasparenza, i modelli economici inclusivi per creare appunto la partecipazione anche all'imprenditorialità, che appunto metta il benessere delle persone e delle comunità al centro. E ovviamente un altro tema, la sostenibilità e l'innovazione, appunto per andare a identificare, a trovare quelle soluzioni adatte affinché ci possa essere, diciamo così, questa messa a comune fra necessità della sostenibilità ambientale e delle sfide economiche. E infine, ma non ultima, la giustizia sociale, che deve proteggere le persone più vulnerabili, deve consentire uno sviluppo resiliente e anche un'attenzione forte alla responsabilità. E appunto in quell'occasione c'è stato molto dibattito, un dibattito partecipato, come devono essere i dibattiti in queste occasioni per questi temi, e studenti, dottorandi hanno collaborato proprio per presentare delle proposte che sono poi confluite in questo manifesto che verrà poi appunto presentato per una nuova economia e che vuole essere in grado di far sì che lo stile di vita sia capace in maniera effettiva, vera, di andare verso queste attenzioni che vi ho detto in precedenza e in particolare rivolgersi alle persone che hanno maggiore fragilità e per incrementare, per potenziare il welfare anche attraverso il potere della prossimità. Quindi, come vi dicevo, questo manifesto sarà presentato e raccoglie il potenziale generativo di tutte le discipline. Io credo che questo manifesto possa essere anche una risposta per far sì che siano evidenziati, che siano poste al centro, che siano poste sempre avanti queste questa necessità, appunto, questa risposta alla sostenibilità. E come sapete il pensiero economico e anche tutte le discipline affini, fra cui voglio aggiungere anche un po' la statistica, ne fa parte, sono fondamentali per questa cultura e sono necessarie per poter attuare questa nuova visione. Quindi non è nemmeno una coincidenza che questo meeting usi un termine che per noi fiorentini è particolarmente caro, rinascimento. E quindi un rinascimento è un modo per ristabilire quei presupposti che hanno creato la nostra cultura, la nostra civiltà. Quindi ho visto un programma bellissimo, densissimo, pieno di relatori e di confronti, dibattiti importanti e anche molto che possono, diciamo così, creare degli spunti, e quindi mi farà molto piacere, per quel che posso, seguire, perché saranno di ispirazione anche per la nostra università. E quindi concludo dicendo che ancora ringrazio davvero tutti i partecipanti per essere qui, tutti i relatori, tutti gli organizzatori, e da parte appunto mia personale e di tutta l'Università di Firenze vi auguro veramente un lavoro, come si dice, che porti a dei risultati sempre più importanti, sempre più nuovi e sempre più sostenibili. Quindi grazie e buon lavoro.
Thank you.
Sì, grazie, buongiorno a tutte e a tutti. Per me è un grande piacere essere qui, sia personalmente che in rappresentanza dell'amministrazione comunale di Firenze a questa seconda edizione della conferenza nazionale. Come diceva la rettrice Petrucci, Firenze è la città del Rinascimento e quindi a maggior ragione, no? È importante che sia stata scelta Firenze e l'Università di Firenze per questa 2 giorni, e forse oggi più che mai è anche una delle città dove riflettere su appunto una nuova rinascita del pensiero economico, capace di mettere appunto al centro la persona, la sostenibilità in tutte le sue articolazioni e accezioni e il bene comune. Quindi la nostra città, la città di Firenze, è davvero orgogliosa di ospitare eventi come questo. Ospiterà il Festival dell'Economia Civile, quindi perché si intreccia insomma una dimensione che è una dimensione accademica, una dimensione sociale, una dimensione istituzionale e soprattutto una dimensione di confronto. E lo sottolineava prima la rettrice, lo risottolineo anch'io, perché questo è un elemento fondamentale anche per chi come me si trova a ricoprire pro tempore, diciamo, il ruolo di amministratrice di una città. E quindi il manifesto che verrà insomma discusso, animato in questi 2 giorni, è sicuramente un contributo prezioso che richiama alla necessità appunto di promuovere la multidisciplinarità, l'inclusività, l'impegno verso il dialogo con la società, l'assunzione di responsabilità e quindi appunto il confronto e la partecipazione. La partecipazione soprattutto appunto di chi per ragioni economiche, sociali, culturali, di lingua troppo spesso si trova ad essere escluso, e questa esclusione produce tutto ciò che conosciamo, insomma, dal disagio alla rabbia e anche a una sfiducia nei confronti delle istituzioni, di tutte le istituzioni. Io rappresento l'istituzione più vicina, no? Di prossimità alle persone, ecco, c'è anche questo. A questo aggiungo davvero rapidamente la necessità, e questo è il luogo appropriato per farlo, siamo nella sede in una delle sedi, la sede importante dell'Università di Firenze, e lo sottolineo proprio da amministratrice, anche l'urgenza di restituire spazio e legittimità al pensiero libero e critico. Troppo spesso il sapere tende a rimanere rinchiuso, passatemi questo termine, in una dimensione fisica, ma anche fra le persone, no? Spesso e volentieri, diciamo, all'atere della vita pubblica e del discorso pubblico. Tra l'altro, mentre l'informazione si concentra quasi esclusivamente sulla cronaca, trascurando l'approfondimento e la complessità delle grandi sfide che abbiamo, appunto quella a partire, insomma, da quella della sostenibilità. E questo indebolisce la conoscenza diffusa tra le persone e talvolta apre la strada anche alla crescita di un pensiero antiscientifico che mina la qualità del dibattito pubblico, mina la certezza e la fiducia nelle istituzioni, come dicevo prima, e mina la capacità collettiva ad affrontare appunto le grandi sfide del nostro tempo. Ecco, io su questo mi permetto di dire, colgo l'occasione di essere qui, di ringraziare l'Università di Firenze attraverso la rettrice Alessandra Petrucci, perché in questi anni, e continueremo a farlo, invece ecco, l'Università di Firenze nel rapporto con le istituzioni e anche in questa dimensione di confronto con la città attraverso tantissime iniziative che fa l'università moto proprio, ma che sono in stretta relazione con l'amministrazione comunale proprio per provare, diciamo, a raggiungere non solo gli obiettivi, ma anche a farlo attraverso appunto una dimensione di confronto con i cittadini nella loro dimensione associativa o nella loro dimensione individuale, che guardate è fondamentale anche per chi appunto amministrando una città complicata e complessa come tutte le città oggi deve misurarsi anche col fare delle scelte e spiegare queste scelte, confrontarsi su queste scelte che hanno bisogno del supporto del pensiero, delle competenze e delle conoscenze che in questo caso l'Università di Firenze, ma in generale, insomma, le istituzioni universitarie, i centri di ricerca possono e devono dare, perché questo è fondamentale appunto e devo dire appunto che con il Comune di Firenze questo sta avvenendo e continuerà ad avvenire. Quindi ringrazio appunto di nuovo l'Università, i promotori del festival e tutte le persone che appunto hanno contribuito a rendere possibile questo appuntamento. Ringrazio Mario Biggeri con cui insomma avviamo un percorso perché appunto il confronto e il contributo appunto delle intelligenze, delle competenze e delle conoscenze sicuramente aiuta appunto anche chi si trova a governare, diciamo, una città. E quindi auguro a tutti un confronto ricco, appassionato e aperto al cambiamento e soprattutto generativo. Grazie.
Grazie veramente per questi interventi. So I will speak in English again. So thank you so much for your intervention. What you said is very important for us. Is the right way to start. We are very, very happy that you are so committed, both the rector and the vice mayor and the mayor as well of Florence, because we think that only when the different stakeholders work together, we can have very good results, and results that are going to last, because are the results that are made by the people as well. And the university and the academia and the institutions, as well the civil society, are here at this conference. So in front of us, we will have 2 days that are really very important. And thanks to your contribution, to all of you, to the contribution of many youth also here, I think we can make the difference. Make the difference also in a discipline that we have to say had demonstrated some lack of understanding the complexity of our life and of our planet. This very important, I feel, conference is linked to another, the festival was mentioned. The festival this year will be the 2nd to the 7th of October, is the 7th edition of this festival, National Festival on Civil Economy, which has brought, is an event, is a bit different, this is more academia, but is an academia where people can come. Everybody could come today to listen. I don't know if you noticed there are no fees, and this was chosen by the organizer. Why? Because we want people to be with us, we want the student to be with us, and this, usually we are much less people. Usually we tend to be just academicians, but no, this is not the way to go. Our vision also in the academia is to be more open, to be able to dialogue and to find solutions together. Okay, thank you so much, and welcome to everybody.
Benvenuti a tutti anche da parte mia, bentornati a chi c'era l'anno scorso a Perugia per il lancio del Manifesto della nuova economia. Oggi la volontà è quella di dare un nuovo slancio a un'iniziativa che nei fatti ha un successo determinato dalle centinaia di firmatari, ma anche dalla presa di coscienza probabilmente che in un periodo che a mia memoria è mai così complesso, determinato anche da cambiamenti importanti, recenti, dall'intensificarsi delle guerre in Medio Oriente, in Ucraina, dalla elezione di Donald Trump, il cambio del pontificato. Dunque, probabilmente anche rispetto all'anno scorso il rinforzare la divulgazione e approfondire le conoscenze dopo il lancio del manifesto è un atto urgente e dovuto. Questo appuntamento oggi, lo ricordo, è inserito all'interno del palinsesto del Festival Nazionale dell'Economia Civile che si svolgerà, lo ha ricordato anche Mario Bigeri prima di me, da Firenze dal 2 al 5 ottobre. Questo panel è organizzato in collaborazione con SPES Project Funded by Horizon Europe e sono già con me Romina Boarini, Director of the OECD Center on Wellbeing Inclusion, Sustainability and Equal Opportunity, Phoebe Koundouri, Professor of Economics and Business at Athens University and University of Cambridge. Vedo collegato, non ancora, aspettiamo Jeffrey Sachs, Professor at Columbia University. Ci raggiungerà poi Mario Nava, del Direttorato Generale per l'Impiego, gli Affari Sociali e l'Inclusione per la Commissione Europea. Lo aspettiamo nei prossimi minuti. Allora, io direi di cominciare. A questo punto parlerei in inglese per rendere tutto più fruibile anche per gli ospiti che ci raggiungeranno. Di lingua inglese. Partirei allora con chi è qui, Romina Boarini. In today's context, what can a new economic vision offer to shift public policies toward sustainability, inclusion and well-being?
Hello. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. And before I'm going to answer your question, but I'll be quick, don't worry. I just want to start by congratulating the organizers of this beautiful event. And I would say all the ones that have been working so hard to launch this much more fundamental movement that we're here to celebrate today. I think it's very, very exciting. And I have a few slides. I don't know whether this can be put on the screen, and if not, it doesn't matter. But maybe we'll give just one sec to see whether this is going to be uploaded. All right, anyway, let me start. What I would like to do... Okay, so what I'd like to do, in fact, in these few minutes I have, is to first providing you a very, very brief overview of the analysis and the data that we have collected in the OECD for the last 15 years. So, you know, this is quite long-standing. And that analysis actually does very much support the vision that underpins the manifesto. So I really wanted to start from this very first key message, that what Manifesto is actually calling for is very much based on evidence and strong data. And so one of the issues that we long analyzed in the OECD is actually the problem of inequalities. This is something we've been highlighting in particular in the White Center that I'm leading. And we collected some data on this, and we published some work, in particular looking at the distribution of income and, of course, how this moved across the years, but also, more importantly, the distribution of wealth. And I would say the results are very astonishing and very sobering. And so the reality is that the distribution of household wealth in OECD countries remains extremely unequal today, even if when you look at aggregate wealth, net wealth of households, this has been growing. Okay, so of course this taken a big hit during the financial crisis, but actually after the recession, wealth started growing away. So there was a sort of, the trend reverted. And at the same time, the distribution actually remained extremely unequal. So just to share a couple of statistics that illustrate that fact. First of all, the top 10% of the richest in OECD hold, in fact, half of the wealth. This is the average value for OECD economies. And the bottom 40%, so the bottom of, the poorest 40%, they have less than 10% of the wealth. Let me say these are conservative estimates, because these are based actually on survey data that capture a lot of the wealth, but we know that actually do the job pretty poorly when it comes to the extreme case of the distribution. Okay, so we're actually not even capturing the extra rich. So that gives you a sense of where we are today in terms of inequality. My second point was about climate change, and again I have some charts here, but I don't see the slides, so it doesn't matter. I'm sure that we will send you the slides after this. So climate change, now in this very high unequal landscape that we are all confronting, climate change is not going to actually make things easier. It is the contrary, and in fact now we have a lot of work and evidence that suggests that climate change is going to exacerbate inequalities. Thank you so much, Phoebe.
Let's see when you're starting.
Yes. The first finding I wanted to point to is actually that regardless of distributional considerations that are important, climate change is coming with a significant economic cost today. Yes, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so my first... Okay, here you go. Okay, so climate change. So let me just talk about here the aggregate problem. Okay, the aggregate problem is such that estimates suggest that climate change is going to result in a destruction or in a loss of almost 20% of income at global level in the next 2-3 decades, regardless of emission choices, okay? So let's say take the baseline today where countries are emitting, so already 20% is going to be gone, okay? And actually the interesting fact about this is that the mitigation cost would be in fact already, so if you take action, it would make it much, much worse because it would reduce significantly the the problem, the economic problem of climate change. So already there is a strong rationale to behave and to to act strongly today. But the problem, and this chart that you can see in the slide now actually shows it very much, is that the costs are not going to be distributed equally across the countries and also within the country. So across the countries, it poses really big issues of international equity, because the countries are going to be hit the most are, we know, the countries that actually have the lowest historical responsibilities in terms of emissions. These are the countries that, let's say, belong to the global south. All countries are going to lose, and all countries are going to see their productivity potential diminishing because of climate change, but the ones that are going to suffer the most are the poorest countries of this world. Within the country, so if you take the distribution perspective inside each of the countries, we know also that it's going to be the bottom part of the distribution. The poorest are going to pay the highest cost, including when you actually intervene strongly with things such as carbon taxes, unless, and the unless is very important, unless you put in place some compensatory measure. So you do fiscal recycling, which means that the revenues generated by carbon taxes are actively used to compensate the losers. Okay, so you make sure that the poorest households are actually helped, and this is what we call the just transition. Now, again. All right, so one other slide to actually illustrate one issue, and I think my friend Lorenzo Fioramonti, that I'm sure some of you know because he's been working a lot on these issues, put it very brilliantly. I thought he said, we are destroying the planet and we're not even having fun. And I think this chart shows it really well, and actually shows it using data that are quite alarming. They're looking at the mental health of population in OECD countries. And what we're seeing here essentially is a declining trend in mental health. A lot of distress, especially being observed among the youth and the youngest population. This was, of course, very much also deteriorated and kind of impacted negatively by the COVID, but it's not just the COVID, okay? So there is a more fundamental problem. A very, very important issue that is related to that is actually loneliness. So that's another important problem considered to be actually public health problems, again, in many countries of this world, okay? So there is an increasing portion of the population, especially among the young, that feel very lonely, okay? So that report those constant sort of feelings of being isolated, social isolated, from the rest of the community and the society. And this is, of course, a real problem. It speaks, I think, to the necessity of thinking this, the transformation we want to see in the economy and society at large. Now, this is my key slide, and this is about the work that the OECD in particular has been doing a lot, and we've been very active on defining metrics that allow you to capture, the value for planet and the value for people, and really allow you to understand, the progress you're making, both from, I would say, an economic perspective, but also from a societal perspective as well. So this is the OECD Wellbeing Framework. We introduced it almost 15 years ago, and this is when the OECD decided as an international organization to actually start looking beyond GDP, to start not just looking at the growth, as sort of, this output that you have to sort of, maximize, but actually the real impact that this is having on people's well-being, and of course on the planet and on the chances of future well-being for future generations. So this is the framework. I'm not sure I'll have the time to comment on this in detail, but of course I'm be very happy to answer any question you may have on this. And the important thing to be said is that the framework comes with a number of metrics and data. So since this was introduced, OECD did a lot of work together with many of the national statistical offices of OECD countries to actually populate the framework with a number of data. And this is now used a lot, including but not only by the OECD, of course, through a sort of regular series of publication, but also by some OECD countries that are actually using it and applying it in many different ways. Now, I have another few slides, but maybe I'll concentrate on this one, and then you tell me, Michele, how long do I have if I can add to this. But so very importantly, I think this is one of the points that the sort of manifesto strongly picks up on, is that, of course, we need different metrics with multidimensional metrics, and of course, not only the OECD has been working on this, UN, a lot of important other people have been working on this, and there are some great experts in this room today that you will hear today and tomorrow that will tell you how this is advanced, and there is a strong convergence being now seen around the notion of inclusive and sustainable well-being. But the important thing is that we're not just measuring for the sake of measuring. So we want to make sure that this data actually get used and they're actually truly informing the policy process. So this is where we've been trying sort of to really insist a lot lately in the OECD, and in particular the Wise Center, which actually was very much created with this idea of let's turn this into real action, okay? Let's try to establish policy mechanisms and give policy solutions that start from those metrics and frameworks. So I want to just, here you have a number of references, but let me highlight one, which is the knowledge exchange platform on well-being. And this is essentially a collaborative of countries that have been introducing well-being metrics and frameworks, okay? So can give you a number of examples, but there have been quite a lot in the last 10 years. Being done in different ways, so governments are really sort of putting in place different tools, in some cases about budgeting, in some cases about policy input assessment and evaluation analysis, in some cases about legislation, having those very, very sort of systemic piece of legislation that is quite overarching, and so it's actually embracing and embedding the well-being principles in a number of sort of very concrete legislative recommendations. So there are many, many different ways, but the important thing with this platform, the knowledge exchange platform, is that the countries now are coming together to actually peer learn, they share, they amplify what they're doing. They're also, of course, sharing a lot of challenges, because this is not easy. So I think this is perhaps something we want to recognize, as a community that works on this issue, that this is not something you can actually, build overnight. This takes a while, and so part of what this platform is doing now is actually build this capacity with this perspective of sort of making it sort of a mid to sort of long-term investment, and produce the ability in governments to actually measure and design and implement policies for promoting greatest well-being. Should we leave it here?
Romina, and I apologize for the delay.
Can you tell them to put my slides on, because it takes some time? Thank you.
Koundouri, eccoci. In arrivo. Ok, perfetto. Dicevo, I will back to you, Director Boarini, soon. Professor Koundouri, we saw many important data about risk for the mental health right now. And what role can economic research play at a time when public discourse is dominated by fear and division?
Okay, thank you very much. I will stand because I cannot speak when I'm sitting. So thank you very much for having me here. When my good friend, Professor Leonardo Baggetti, showed me the manifesto, I said, yes, this is actually what I have been doing for the whole of my life. So although I am a mathematical economist and statistician, I've always worked in interdisciplinary frameworks, focusing on modeling mathematically the interaction between nature, economy, and society, because without a deep understanding of this interaction, it is my belief that we cannot solve any of our problems. So I've been always working in very intradisciplinary, but also interdisciplinary frameworks. First, putting together the different disciplines, the sciences, the natural sciences with the socioeconomic sciences, and then integrating the results of this interdisciplinarity into an intradisciplinary dialogue. That means co-designing with the stakeholders, identifying the stakeholders and co-designing the solution pathways with the stakeholders. So if I manage to change my slide, how do you change them? It goes, okay. So when Leonardo showed me the 5 major points, axes of this manifesto, I could touch on each and every one of them, but the thrust of my work is basically on interdisciplinarity and understanding and modeling and doing policy on the interaction between nature, economy, and society. Today I'm gonna be showing you a bit on the measurement, like the previous speaker did, but also a very explicit methodology on the way to solve the problem and produce the solution pathways that give you the optimal mixture of technologies, fiscal and financial instruments, and policies that will get you from where you are, and this is what the KPIs and the metrics is to where you want to go. So where we are in this era of polycrisis. We've went through a pandemic. We have fiscal and financial problems, shrinking fiscal spaces, 1/3 of the countries across the world in the brink of default or at default. We also have the climate crisis that is very destructive for the economy, for the society, for health, the biodiversity collapse crisis. And with this, we have a population difficulty, aging population, longevity in the Western world, and also increasing population in the global south. And on top of this, increasing inequality, like it was already mentioned, between income groups in the same country and in the developed world, but also between the global north and the global south. Now, do we have a solution? Well, we do. 2015, UN, September, 196 countries say that this is our blueprint for escaping the multi-crisis. 17 goals, 4 of them on natural capital, 8 of them on social capital, 4 of them on economic capital, and then partnerships for the goals. This framework has 17 goals, 169 targets, and we have developed under United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network a framework of about 300 KPIs that allows you to measure the performance against these goals and targets. And this allows you to say, I know where I am, I can measure it, I can quantify it, and I can decide, based on these initial conditions, how I'm gonna design my escape from the multi-crisis towards a sustainable economy and society. And this is exactly what we do in Euphoria. Euphoria was launched in 1997 when I was in Cambridge University. And at the moment, it counts 200 researchers working in 120 countries with a lot of competitive research funding. It focuses on research and innovation acceleration, because it's also important, technological, social, financial innovation. It's not enough to produce it in research. You have to incubate and accelerate it into the market quickly in order to achieve integration in the economy and achieve the growth you want to achieve. And of course, we work a lot with the science policy interface and many academies across the world that bring in the best minds in order to solve these problems. So thematic priorities are climate neutrality and resilience, water, food, energy, and biodiversity nexus, land use and land use change, blue economy, socioeconomic, financial, behavioral economics, innovation, education, upskilling, and reskilling. Very quickly, what is our methodology? The first thing is, where do I want to go? And let me suggest that I want to go where my policy framework points to. It doesn't mean that the policy framework is perfect, but at least it's a target-setting device. So we have the SDGs at the global level, we have the climate agreement at the global level, and then each region of the world has transposed these global policies into detailed policy frameworks. In Europe, we have the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is a very holistic framework, putting together the three systems that I am talking about, very integrated framework, 150 laws and regulations, trying to get our economy and society on a sustainable pathway as defined by the SDGs. I'm not gonna go through the different policies. This is a bird's eye view of what is there. I'm just gonna show you what our deep neural network analysis indicates, that they are a good mirror image, the 150 laws and regulations of the European Green Deal, of the SDGs, and the 169 targets within them. Let me move forward. So you know where you want to go, and you also know where you are. Like I said before, SDSN has been publishing reports at the global level, European level, country level, subnational level, that measure our performance against the SDGs, the 169 targets within them, and using 300 indicators. So we know where we are. And like I said, global level, this is the global level of the natural capital, looking at climate, land use, food systems, and ocean and sea systems. We also downscale to Europe. I am every year co-authoring this report. We downscale to countries. Red means huge challenges remain, below 60% implementation. Green means the SDGs achieved, and yellow means we are on a good pathway. Orange means major challenges remain. So you can see that in Europe, which is the most sustainable part of the world, we have not achieved any SDG, and we are on target to achieve only 3. You can see the green arrows that are there. Green going upwards means that 2030 we are going to achieve the SDGs. And we can downscale to national level. This is what we did in Greece. Why is this important? You know where you are. You know where you are performing well. You know where you are not performing well. And it's not just a qualitative performance indicator. It's a quantitative performance indicator that you can monitor and assess continuously using socioeconomic data, satellite data, in situ data, spatial data, data from turns. There is a huge data gathering exercise, working with this data and calculating all the relevant indices. And we have also transposed this for companies, or even institutional level. So we have an e-platform which has 3 stages and allows you first to identify the data that you need in order to calculate the sustainability performance of the value chain of each of your companies or of each of your municipalities, cities, institutions, universities. Identify the data that you need to do that along the value chain for each sector of your company, do the materiality assessment, identify within your company stakeholder and outside your company stakeholders what are the material issues that you need to focus on, then measure with explicit KPIs and translate the ESG measurement, economic, social, governance measurement, into SDGs. Why? Because SDGs have targets, explicit targets. So you can measure the gap you need to close in order to become sustainable. And the third stage, it's about creating a continuous monitoring and assessment dashboard that allows you to see at any point in time how you're progressing with regards to your ESGs and SDGs, produce quickly your sustainability reports, and identify where you need investments, where you need transformation, and do that in a way that it is profitable, especially for companies. There is no point in trying to convince profit-making institutions, their mission is to make profit, that they need to transform, and while doing so, they are gonna lose money. No, you have to find the ways that ESG compatibility is profitable. And it's easy to do so, because circularity renewables are cost efficient, and they are market increasing. So at the end of the day, they are investment and profit-making compatible. And at the moment, with the EU taxonomy, but also other taxonomies across the world, the EU taxonomy has been copied in more than 54 countries outside Europe. You can get cheap money for these investments. And very quickly, just to showcase the map of where we work, these are our climate projects. We don't work in countries that are gray yet. These are our water, food, energy, and biodiversity land use projects. Sustainable pathways for seas and oceans. Sea is very important, blue economy is very important, shipping, ports, energy production from the sea, aquaculture, and coastal management, tourist management, behavioral economics, financial economics, and sustainable pathways for financing, scaling up innovation, replicating, accelerating, creating the incubation system that transposes the innovation into successful companies. We have accelerated more than 25 startups over time. And then the last bit of our work is upskilling, reskilling. In the last COP, in the Dubai COP, not the last one in Baku, we have presented a report that showcases that 85% of the skills and professions that are needed to implement the European Green Deal, the 150 laws and regulations that are already the legal responsibility in each and every country in Europe, 85% of the workforce that you need for this is missing, which means that you have to upskill and reskill and make curricula in universities consistent with the new era of interdisciplinarity, of renewables, of circular economy, of nature-based solutions, of e-mobility, of digitalization. And just to showcase, I will close here, and then in my second round, I will show you a bit of the modeling, the mathematics behind all of this. But to showcase an example of this integrated approach that is needed in order to make progress, in order to provide the recommendations for governments that make sense, let me show you what we do in the Global Climate Hub of SDSN under the auspices of the General Secretary of the UN. The idea is to create climate neutrality and climate resilience, that is mitigation and adaptation for each and pathways for each and every country in the world. And in order to do this, you need to be very holistic. This is a holistic exercise. This is an exercise that really integrates nature, economy, and society. So we have 3 layers. The first layer is the one that I call interdisciplinary mathematical modeling. There, we downscale IPCC scenarios. And on these scenarios, we choose the sustainable one. There is no point identifying pathways on non-sustainable ones. The fully sustainable and the medium sustainable, median sustainable, and then we work with the different systems of the economy, think of them as economic sectors in a broad sense, the energy system, the transport system, the agriculture and land use system, the marine use system, the health system. These are mathematical models that allow you to derive the optimal mixture of technologies and fiscal and financial instruments and policies that will get you from where you are to where you want to go. And at the end of the day, we embed these transformations in general equilibrium analysis systems in order to identify the impacts per economic sector of the time transition and also the trade impacts. I'm finishing. The second layer is transdisciplinary. So in all this process of mathematical modeling, you speak with the stakeholders, living labs. We have a living lab in each and every country through SDSN network, and we work with the stakeholders in order to embed their vision, preferences, worries, abilities into the transition pathways in a way that they own the final pathway, they are shareholders of the final pathway, and at the end of the day, they get to implement it. And finally, all is documented in a platform which is open access and collects all the data, spatial, internet, time series, socioeconomic, real time. It allows you access to all the modeling, the integrated modeling approach, where you see the modeling suite, and then it produces dashboards and decision support systems, and digital twins are different scales for the stakeholders, politicians, policymakers, businesses, financiers, the civil society, to actually play with the results, understand them. We provide seminars and upskilling workshops and be able to implement. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Koundouri. You should have joined us, Professor Sachs. Yes. It's, first of all, thank you so much for your contribution. If I'm not mistaken, it's a little bit late at night where you are, Professor. Thank you for being with us. And we are talking about the Manifesto for a New Economy, which now has an international scope at a time when geopolitics is once again dominating the global agenda. It is still possible to talk about cooperation for a fair and sustainable economy. Un secondo, riusciamo a risolvere tecnicamente. Let's try again, Professor Sachs. We have a technical problem, but maybe we solve the problem at the moment, at the time. It doesn't work. Sorry. Hold on. We'll give a solution as soon as we can. No, ce l'ha. Can you hear me, Professor? Lui ci sente, ma non riusciamo a sentire il suo audio. Okay, we'll back to you as soon as we can, just to a few minutes to solve. Okay, let's try now. Let's try now, Professor.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Very well, very loud. Perfect.
Wonderful. Warm greetings to everybody, and special greetings to lots of friends and colleagues in the room, and to thank you for all that you're doing. Thanks to Leonardo Becchetti for helping to lead us. Thank you, Phoebe, for your wonderful work that you've just described, which is so important in bringing together these various dimensions of public policy in an integrated way. Leonardo and I have been working during the past couple of years on the global dimension of the Economic Manifesto, and I want to say a few words about that with you this morning, friends. The idea of the Global Manifesto, like the idea of the original Economic Manifesto, is to help reshape what economics should mean for our time, because economics as a healing art, as a technical set of skills to help human embetterment, needs to evolve as the conditions of life and the challenges of life change. And we are definitely in a new era, and we need new emphases, new skills, and a new direction. And there are four motivating factors at the global scale that I think are extremely important. First, we are now in a multipolar world, undoubtedly, but we are not yet in a multilateral world. Multipolarity is a fact that there are now several poles of global power and global economy, and certainly the United States, the European Union, Russia, China, India, and I think in the future, African Union, and certainly Latin America, I hope in a more regional way, will be part of that multipolar world. But a multilateral world is different from a multipolar world. A multilateral world means, or I think should mean, a world in which the different polarities work in a consistent law-based and ethics-based framework of political behavior and geopolitics. Ideally, that would be one that at the global level operates under the United Nations Charter, perhaps a UN Charter that is suitably reformed, and at the regional level operates in effective groupings that can achieve regional public goods. And the European Union, even though it's the most advanced of all of these regional groupings in the world, is still very much a flawed project and a work in progress. The second dimension, which I don't really have to elaborate, is the polycrisis, or the multiple crises that we face in the world. Of course, the most dire of these are the violent conflicts, the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, the conflict between India and Pakistan, the conflict in the Eastern Congo, and the near conflict between the US and China in East Asia are the most dire of all of these polycrises. But of course, lurking beneath the dramatic events of violent conflict are the somewhat slower moving, but now actually galloping crises of environment, also in its multiple dimensions that Phoebe just mentioned. The global climate crisis, the crisis of ecosystem functioning and biodiversity, the mega pollution that is pervasive in many, many forms in the soils, in the air, in the fresh water, and in the oceans. So this environmental crisis has been building for at least a half century in a very dramatic way, and we've so far been unable to curb it, even to limit its scale, despite decades now of operating under international treaties to do so. We also have obvious, very profound social crises, massive crises of exclusion, hundreds of millions of school-age kids not able to go to school, massive deprivations of basic health services, billions of people who cannot afford a healthy diet, many social crises that are utterly unjustified in a world of plenty. So these multiple crises are growing in scale and in urgency and require our attention, obviously. The third dimension that provokes the global manifesto is the profound inequality of global society. Of course, we're used to speaking of the inequalities of income and of wealth. We're also fairly used to speaking of the inequalities of power, military power, possession of nuclear arms, and so forth. I think equally daunting, just as dangerous in many ways, is the inequality of access to cutting-edge technologies. Of course, technology is a wonderful thing in that, in general, technology is non-rival in that it can be diffused and used worldwide, but its ownership and control is definitely rival. And many of the cutting-edge technologies in biotechnology or artificial intelligence or other related cutting-edge technologies are in the hands of very, very small numbers of actors with the extraordinary, indeed unprecedented power. Ever since we entered the nuclear age, a few people can destroy the entire world, can end civilization. This inequality absolutely is vastly greater than the inequalities of income and wealth with which we are familiar. And I would say the fourth crisis is a very deep crisis of ethics, and that is a very poor understanding of what we should be doing, not at the technical level of how to solve problems, but at the ethical level of how to choose aims and how to choose the means to reach those goals. We are, or have been, I would say, for the last 2 centuries, dominated by an Anglo-Saxon logic of power, an Anglo-Saxon ethics of kind of libertarianism at the individual and business level, and a rather brutal realism, so-called, at the international level, but both that are essentially philosophies of power that go back in British thinking to Hobbes, to Locke, and to kind of social Darwinism, far beyond anything Darwin intended, but became dominant ideologies globally because of the dominance of the British Empire in the 19th and early 20th centuries and the dominance of the American Empire since World War II. And this is really a crisis of ethics because this ethics of power is essentially incompatible with our survival. But it's an ethics of the powerful as well, that power should be unconstrained, that liberty of action is the dominant ethics, Well, that's something that's very congenial, say, to a Silicon Valley billionaire, but it doesn't make much sense for the rest of us in society that are not Silicon Valley billionaires or managers of the military-industrial complex. So we have this kind of global values crisis, which is very deep. One of the great antidotes to that values crisis, I would say, is the Catholic social teachings of the last 125, 34 years precisely since Rerum Novarum was issued by Pope Leo the 13th, the Leo before our current Leo, in initiating Catholic social doctrine in the late 19th century. And the idea is actually the collective spirit of Catholic faith and ethical tradition rather than the libertarianism of the Anglo-Saxon philosophical tradition. So this has led Leonardo and me and others to consider what would be the elements of a new global economics that would respond to these four interconnected, profound challenges of our time, of the something new, the rerum novarum of the 21st century. And we focus on six elements in this global manifesto that I think are worthy of our attention. The first, and Phoebe illustrated it in her talk, is the need for a holistic approach and an interdisciplinary approach. Economics obviously cannot stand on its own. It is part of a systems thinking that must include technology systems, engineered systems, or physical systems, and social systems. So economics is a discipline of systems approach that must be interdisciplinary in its recognition. Second is global scale. Economics is not a local field or a local practice. Our economies do not stand on their own. The global interconnectedness is a defining feature of economics, not a side note. The fact that Donald Trump is trying to break the international order is no small matter. The world economy is truly a global economy, and the interconnectedness is a central feature. The third dimension of the new economics is that it must be grounded in what we understand of human nature, not the Homo economicus of our textbooks, which is a clever modeling tool, but one that is removed from actual human nature, and one that has been essentially found to be profoundly flawed every time that economists try to understand actual human behavior rather than the simplified behavior of the textbooks. And so an economics that is grounded in the dimensions of human psychology and human nature that take us back to Aristotelian ideas and to Aquinas's ideas and to a much richer anthropology than that of the simplified Hobbesian world is crucial for us. The fourth element that is an implication of all of this is the focus on collective action as opposed to individual action. If you are like me, when I studied economics, of course, we learned public economics and about public goods, but they came late. First, we learned about markets and the magic of the invisible hand and the Pareto optimality of perfect competition and so forth. And the point is that there is no invisible hand. And this is the hard truth that even Adam Smith knew, but did not emphasize sufficiently in Book 5 of The Wealth of Nations, but has been recognized from the time of Plato and Aristotle and Aquinas and 2,500-year Western tradition. So we need to return to the idea of collective action as a centerpiece of human well-being. That leads us to the notion of our aims and to the idea of the common good, which of course is an embracing idea that requires lots of careful analysis and thought and application. But the idea is that we are aiming for the common good, not of the good of a Silicon Valley billionaire or the powerful states, but of the common good. And our expressions at the global political level are the Sustainable Development Goals, the idea of leaving no one behind, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the final point of the Global Manifesto is that to achieve these aims is not only the technical work of economists, very important, of redefining and redesigning our profession and our technical activities and our journals and our promotion criteria and so forth, but also the need for dialogue across cultures and across civilizations. I think one of the saddest ideas of modern times has been the clash of civilizations. This was a descriptive title given by a late colleague of mine, Samuel Huntington at Harvard University, to his thought that we would enter a period of global clash. That still is a possibility. But I like much better the idea of the Alliance of Civilizations, which is a United Nations initiative led by one of our SDSN colleagues, Miguel Moratinos. And the idea is that it's civilizational dialogue, mutual respect, and cooperation that is our true hope. One of the great messages of the late Pope Francis was his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, all brothers and sisters, that he issued in 2019, I believe. But the essence of that encyclical was to call for global encounter on a basis of mutual respect. In the opening of the encyclical, he tells the story of St. Francis of Assisi traveling in the year 1219 to the battlefield of the Fifth Crusade to meet the Sultan al-Kamil al-Malik on the battlefield to try to make peace between Christians and Muslims. Well, the encounter did not succeed in achieving peace. It did succeed in achieving an encounter that was remembered 800 years later. And it is that kind of encounter, that dialogue across civilizations that is so essential. So this is our call in the Global Manifesto for a truly interdisciplinary, ethical, and mutually respectful global economics. And it's one that I feel is absolutely apt for our time. And I thank you for the chance to share these ideas with you, but especially look forward to our collegiality and our encounters in person in the coming weeks and months so that we can put this manifesto into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sachs. Thank you to join us. And let's try to do a second round. I kindly ask to be a little bit briefer. And Director Boarini, We talked with Professor Sachs about how can the principles of the manifesto be put into practice. Now, what concrete tools can we use to ensure that future generations do not bear the cost of today's economic decision?
Well, thank you for the question. I'm going, I think, to start by making reference to the point that Jeffrey just made about, the ethics crisis, because I think this is really probably the most significant of all, in a way, generated the other ones. And if we don't fix that one, I don't think we're going to find very, very durable, meaningful solutions. And so I think, and also allows me to perhaps, connect me to what Phoebe was saying about focus on kind of skilling people and your youth, and obviously, skilling in the right way. And I think one very specific point is making sure that we are not just building technical skills, and of course skills for AI and hard skills, all that sort of things have to be there. But I think it's about how we actually build character. How do we build moral judgment? How we help students developing those very fundamental basic abilities. And I think a lot of the teaching system, education system, training systems nowadays, and it's not just true for the young people, I think this is true in general as well for adults, really are focusing on technicalities, on the technical skills. This is important, but I think that's not going to help with the sort of ethical crisis. And I think there is a very, very important connection, of course, to make here with AI and the digital transformation, AI transformation. This is also a place where if you don't get the ethics right, we're going to have serious issues for humanity going forward. I also wanted to refer to a couple of more very concrete initiatives that are being developed, in fact, at the moment, so concrete tools. One is actually something that dates already, so it was introduced by Wales, in the UK, and they came with this idea of establishing of a commissioner for future generations. So they introduced an act, okay, so it's a legislative piece, very high level, so a lot of power for that piece of legislation that actually commands that a number of very specific legislative but also policy mechanisms do embed very concrete principles for ensuring that the policy decisions are taken today are actually respectful of the rights of future generation. And so this is an interesting case study, I think, of how you can think about well-being and sustainability, putting the youth lens today. Because of course we know that one of the problems here is that a lot of the decisions that governments take today are very short-sighted, okay, and can discuss for hours why it is the case. It's a big political economy problem, etc., etc. But if you just observe the practice of it, is that a lot of the policy decisions tend to be shorter term, and so it's not, and of course, same for business, etc., etc. But so, how do you actually, find a way to overcome that problem? Okay, and so I think the future commissioner idea is a brilliant one. So actually, since Wales has introduced it, they have again the legislation, but actually they also translated into real action. They also created a number of other tools, and they have, I think, 15 sort of little committees, and it's interesting, right, because this is a small kind of state, but they've done quite a lot. So they built a lot of capacity around how they actually go from those higher level principles for the well-being of future generations, sustainability of well-being, building resources for the future generations, etc., into the decision. So typically, for instance, if they have to they take a decision around, do they invest in building some very specific infrastructure, or are they going to much more sort of protect nature, etc. So how you do this using very concrete criteria, and so very, very specific impact assessment methodologies that allow you to say this is going to be the benefit today, and this is going to be the benefit or the harm that you're making to future generations. I think this is very interesting initiative, and one I think that there will be a lot of leeway to replicate in many other places. I also wanted to talk about an initiative we're developing right now in the OECD. It's a new instrument for getting commitments from countries to actually commit promoting the well-being of children and youth. And the idea of this instrument is precisely also to get this, mid-term sort of commitments and actually social invest in youth and children. And we're doing this, of course, in the context of some very specific problems that are affecting youth. We were talking about mental health, we're talking about loneliness, but of course, the digital kind of discussion is another one that is obviously with evident immediate consequences for the well-being of the young generation. Climate change as well, of course, a lot of science that demonstrates actually that children are the most vulnerable to climate change. So, they are kind of the first one to be impacted by that. And so, we developed this, we are working on developing this new instrument where we will have countries, hopefully being ready to sort of adhere to some principles for better governing today for children. That also actually means, not just principles, but also improving in terms of the social policy. So it's building partly on what Europe has already been doing in the context of the EU child guarantee, where the idea is that you provide, a sort of minimal level of endowments or basic services provided when it comes to education, health, but also care and housing, right? And in particular to protect, of course, the most vulnerable children, the most disadvantaged ones, etc., etc. So the idea, the OECD is sort of leveraging the Euro piece, but bringing there also other countries that are in the OECD and not in Europe. I also, perhaps in closing, want to flag that Europe is currently working also on a new strategy of intergenerational fairness. They also, with this new commission, established a role for a commissioner on intergenerational equity, and I think it's very much in the making. It's a pity that Mario is not with us, as yet, but maybe will comment himself on this. This is really forthcoming, and the idea is it's precisely try to bring in the perspectives of voices and the ones that are not with us today, but obviously are going to be massively impacted by decisions that are taken today. So at the end, obviously, it comes down to empowering the youth. And I think, if I have to, perhaps one observation, this is maybe just based on the very interesting presentation by Phoebe and everything she was showing, and we have so many data. I think the problem is not lack of evidence, lack of understanding, or lack of knowledge. I think the problem is coming from a basic lack of political incentives for governments, and of course not just governments, talking about all important actors in the economy and society. So for actually not doing the right thing, right? And so I'm thinking it'd be very great to think about how youth could, become or could actually develop real mechanisms to push those incentives. So it's, of course, part of it is voting, with your feet and kind of, they have that power, right? But maybe they should use it more. But maybe we can actually be even more creative and think about very concrete tools that they could use to actually to exert that very important pressure on the policy makers, the decision makers today, to actually move in the right direction.
Thank you, Director Boarini. We are focusing our attention on how the principle of the manifesto can be put into practice. Professor Koundouri, how can we translate concepts like sustainability and climate justice into economic choices that are understandable and acceptable as well to everyone?
Yes, thank you very much. Again, a very, very interesting session, a privilege to be in this session. First of all, let me agree with Romina. Sustainability is difficult, not just because it's about interdisciplinarity and intradisciplinarity. It is also the wicked problem of short, medium, and long-run integration. So you need to find time-consistent dynamic pathways that are correct for the short run, the medium run, and the long run. And we all know that uncertainty and time are positively correlated. So as you try to figure out what you are going to offer the next generation and the generation next to it and all future generations, you are faced with increased uncertainty, which at some point becomes ambiguity. You don't even know the probabilities of the possible events. So the problem is difficult. I have a big ERC project on exactly that, deriving integrated socioeconomic pathways that allow you to be resilient and efficient in both the short, medium, and long run. And in order to do that, it's not enough just to work on the discount rate and integrate in the discount rate this uncertainty. We've done that in 2000, subcontracted by the PM of the UK for the Treasury, looking into time declining, different versions of long-run social discount rates that integrate this increasing uncertainty, and in that way making interest rates for the long run consistent with the concept of intergenerational equity. So you need to understand the preferences, you need to of people, the time preferences, you need to understand the economy in terms of uncertainty in the growth rate of the actual economy, and you need to understand the growth rate in a mode of beyond GDP. So you need to integrate values that are not explicitly monetized in markets, and this is a challenge. Now, in an attempt to convince you that what we are doing and we will be presenting at the UN conference in Seville for sustainable finance, and then at the UN General Assembly in New York, and then at COP23, I will show you how we've done this integrated exercise that I advocated before for Greece. I'm gonna go quickly, but I would love to say and get your attention to this, because in these conferences, at the UN conferences, we are presenting results for the 27 countries in Europe, the whole of the Balkans, Southeast Asia, and UK. And then we are moving forward with results for each and every country across the world. So let's focus on one country very quickly. We start from Greece. We have results for Italy, and we are gonna stakeholder engage in order to validate those as well. So we get the baseline scenario, business as usual, and we get the national commitments with regards to sustainability as the alternative scenario. And then we figure out in each and every country which are the overarching policies. In Greece is the National Climate and Energy Plan. Each and every European country has one, and other countries across the world have one. Is the Common Agriculture Policy transposition into the Greek system. It's the water policy, which is about the Water Framework Directive and the management of river basin plans. And for Greece, because it's such a big commercial power in terms of fleet, is marine policy and IMO and European policies with regards to ETS, including shipping. Now, first we start with energy system pathways. Here we use LEAP, an updated version of LEAP that is not only supply side driven, it's demand driven as well. And we do an analysis for each and every sector of the economy, residential, industry, agriculture, transport services. We do an analysis for each energy supply, primary, secondary, and transformation processes. And we also do an analysis on the emissions, on the pollutions. And at the end of the day, you get the optimal mixture of energy, the decline in emissions, the decline in pollutions, and the ability to the expansion in renewables, the energy supply shift, and the energy consumption. So you know exactly what you are doing at each and every year of your economic history, changing the technological mix, changing the prices, changing consumption, changing supply in a very integrated way for all the sectors of the economy. And we've done this for the whole of Europe. Again, an cost minimization exercise. And here you can see the optimal energy sources for each and every country in Greece and the Balkans, and also the green corridors, how you export energy if you have supply, how you import if your demand increases and you have a deficit. Then we move to the agriculture, biodiversity, food system. Here we have a calculator, the Fable calculator, led by SDSN and EASA. And here what we do is that we calculate optimal pathways for the agriculture, forestry, and biodiversity sector that allow you to reduce costs, reduce emissions, and meet food security, climate goals, and biodiversity goals. And these are the projections from Greece. I will go faster, but it shows that you can increase productivity, reduce emissions, reduce costs, and increase the land that you leave without interventions in order to have nature-based solutions things. And then it's not just mitigation, it's adaptation. So we have techniques that allow you to downscale to a country and showcase how after a flood or a forest fires, you can intervene in order to protect and restore, and how much you gain in terms of social welfare because you do that. Then we calculate dynamic linear programming mode, the blue economy, the shipping sector. We define optimal fleet, optimal investments, optimal shift of fuels, optimal shift of technology, and these are dynamically implementable, and they are integrated between the energy system data gets into the marine system data. Data gets into the marine system data in terms of the interaction at the coast. And then we calculate water requirements for the energy system, the agricultural system, all integrated, land requirements, because you are increasing your renewables, you need more land for solar, for wind, and then all of it come together and presented to the stakeholders in a way that they can understand how they implement, they can understand the solutions, and they can even simulate more efficient solutions than the optimal climate commitment scenarios that they do through their NDCs and their National Climate and Energy Plan, because here they can change the prioritization of implementation of different solution pathways and become more efficient in terms of cost or time in the implementation. And just let me close with one sentence and say that all of this is then embedded in an impact assessment model, some partial, some general, computable equilibrium models that not only identify the impacts and the equity results on welfare across countries and within countries, but they also integrate the valuation of natural capital and cultural capital that is not in traditional impact assessment model. Through no-market valuation, this is very important because natural capital, when monetized, cultural capital, when monetized, are really put into the center of the conversation and investment decisions and policy decisions. And it is crucial to do so because a lot of natural and cultural capital is what supports the the good function, the efficient function of our economies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nava, who joined us, Director General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion of the European Commission. Thank you for joining us. We are focusing our attention on the principle of the manifesto. So let's talk about Europe. How can Europe remain a global benchmark for an inclusive and fair economy in a world so polarized politically and socially?
Thank you very much, Michele, and happy to be here with Romina, Phoebe, and Mario. I must confess that a bit cheekily, when you invited me in December, one of the reasons why I accepted to come was because yesterday was a very important day in Brussels. Yesterday, as you have seen, what we did in Brussels was to adopt the European semester. European semester is that governance instrument that basically tries to respond to your question. It tries to respond exactly the question of how can we, can Europe remain a global benchmark for social and inclusive economy in a world which is polarized. If you follow the semester over the years, you see very clearly that the attention of the semester has shifted. And now you see that the semester has become much more social and has become much more looking exactly at the matter you are talking about. Now, it's well known in Europe, not only in Brussels, but in the whole of Europe, we take a great pride about the so-called social market economy. Now, what's the social market economy? What is that citizen can touch when you talk about social market economy? For example, quality healthcare, for example, fair working conditions, for example, adequate wages, or for example, free education. Ultimately, what we are looking for is balancing economic growth with solidarity and fairness. But obviously, at the same time, we face competitiveness challenges. And if the competitiveness challenges are left unaddressed, it's clear that at the end of the day, they make the system to expose. And this is very clear in any type of social value behind the economy. I mean, this is what Leone XIII said in the Rerum Novarum, or what Karl Marx made as a critique to the capitalism. If you let the capitalism go whereby there is no, let's say, sort of compensation between those who earn too much and those who earn too little, at the end, the capitalism will explode. So what is quite interesting is that the European criticism to a model which does not contain inside the solidarity element comes from both sides. Probably in this period where we are now, where one of the main elements is the one that we possess, a labor market that has changed pretty dramatically. In the last 20 years, the labor market in Europe has changed dramatically. I mean, when I was a young guy and I did a PhD, the title of the book of my professor was Richard Layard. The title of the book, so labor markets, the title of the book of Richard Layard was Unemployment. There's not a single professor of economics that today would write a book on unemployment because it would not sell, very simply. Would write a book on labor shortages, would write a book on skill shortages, would write a book on skill mismatch, and then many other things. So the market has changed, but with the change of the market, you realize how some elements that we had of the social market economy help. If you think education in a slack labor market could, by someone, be considered as a private good. Why not? If the labor market is slack, education is somewhat of a private good. I get a good education, I get a good job. Someone gets a bad education, gets a bad job, tough luck for him or for her. But if the labor market is tight, the argument is completely false. Because if the labor market is tight, we need everybody to work. And therefore, low-educated people generate negative externalities, which is paid also by the others. Which shows why education, together with the tightness of the labor market, has become very much of a public good. This is, if you put the two things together, the quest for competitiveness and the quest for skills, reinforcing skills, you have basically seen what the von der Leyen II Commission has done in the first 6 months. Because basically, in the first 6 months, we have done the competitiveness compass, which is, if you want, the bureaucratic translation of the Letta and Draghi report with a series of actions in order to reinforce our competitiveness. And within those actions, one of the so-called horizontal enablers is exactly the skills. And is exactly the skills because in a labor market tight, skills is what matters. But then, if I can continue the argument over your question, Michele, if skills is what matters and we need education in order to be competitive as a society, and if the labor market is tight, well, then is the right moment to look also at other things, to look, for example, at quality job. So the quantity jobs, which seems to have solved it, but the quality job is something that matters and is something to which we need to look at. What is quality jobs? Quality jobs is, again, fair wages, good working conditions, good contracts, possibility to be skilled and reskilled and upskilled, possibility to, if the worst comes, to have a good transition, some type of social protection. That is what a good quality job is. And third, of course, the issue of inclusion. The issue of inclusion was an issue that till a few years ago was mostly a solidarity issue. It's good to be inclusive because we are good people and we believe in not leaving anybody behind. That remains true, of course. We remain good people. We remain with good instincts. We don't like people remaining behind. But once again, in the current demographic situation, in the current labor market, inclusion often becomes activation, because we all know that the best way to include someone in the society is to make sure that that someone does have a job. So inclusion becomes activation. And if it becomes activation, then it's linked to all the other policies that we do, that are the policies on investment on skills, investment on the functioning of the labor market. Another thing that the von der Leyen Commission did in these first 6 months was to sign, together with the social partners, of course, a new pact for social dialogue. We did that in January. I had the honor to be the chair of these things, so we did it in January. I could tell you it was a very honest and intense work. Of course, it was intense, several days in a room without windows, as we like to joke in Brussels. Not that if there are windows, the difference outside is big, but apart from that, in a room without windows. And then at the end of January, we had the text, and in less than a month, it was agreed with the social partners. So to me, this is what makes the equation. And that's why, as I said, a little bit cheekily, I admit, but I accept it because it's the day after the semester, and if you don't believe in what I've said, or you think I'm painting a too rosy a picture, just check the semester, and we are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nava, for your contribution. Thank you all for your participation. As we move toward the conclusion of our session, we should are joined remotely by Pedro Conceição, Director of the Human Development Report Office at the United Nations Development Program. Good morning and welcome. Can you hear me?
Hi, Michele. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. And the same question for you about the proposal of the manifesto, if it's possible in a situation where we have weakening democracies and persistently high inequalities in our society, if the manifesto offered to guide policy in a fundamentally different direction, placing sustainability, inclusion, and well-being for all at the heart of the economy, is it possible to think about this kind of future?
Thank you, Michele. I think it is possible. Whether it will happen or not is it's a matter of choice, and I think that's why the manifesto is so important. I'll be brief because we're running late, and I just wanted to reflect perhaps on a question that came several times. It was mentioned by Jeff, by Romina as well, to some extent, which is the following. In a sense, we understand the problems very well, and we even have very clear solutions on how to address them, or very clear pathways on how to make a difference in addressing them. And yet, we seem not to be making as much progress as we would like, or certainly not at the pace that is commensurate with the challenges that we confront. And we've heard many of the challenges already. I'll just add one more that was highlighted in our latest Human Development Report that we just published 2 weeks ago, which is related to the fact that we are now entering an era in which we are seeing a divergence in performances in human development between the top performers, so countries with very high levels of the Human Development Index, which is the proxy that we use for human development, and countries at the very bottom. So we are now entering the 4th year gap is widening. And this breaks with the trend of convergence that had been happening for decades. So again, let me go back to my question and to link this to some of the messages that come from the manifesto, and why I think that the manifesto can make a difference, but perhaps I'll also make a suggestion on the need to go even beyond what the manifesto is suggesting. So again, the question is, so why are not we acting on the information we have, on all the technical reports and models that tell us what we need to do? And obviously, there are many reasons. Some have to do with power, and obviously political scientists have been examining the question of power and how it affects not only political, but social and economic outcomes for many years. And I think they've made their way also into economics more and more, you know, in the field of political economy, for instance, and others. But I want to explore a little bit more deeply one of the elements of the manifesto, which is this idea of going beyond homo economicus. And I want to do it not by saying that the basic model of utility maximization based on the axioms of rational choice is wrong as such, but more that it's limited in its application. So I think it's an approximation to human behavior that may be helpful in many contexts. Say, I don't know, if you're trying to solve a problem of airplanes that are overbooked. So, you know, mechanism design and these axioms and assumptions of human behavior may give you a pretty good, efficient and fair way of solving this particular problem. And it's implemented widely, as we all know. I think the challenge is when we go towards behaviors that cannot be accounted for or explained by this simple model. I guess one of the most dramatic illustrations of this is that we see today in many societies that people seem to vote or express political views and defend political positions that are seemingly against what an economist would consider to be in their self-interest. And so what explains this behavior? And I think this calls for a broader understanding of human motivations. And I think we need to give economics its due. It's not like economists have not realized the need to go beyond this very simple or simplistic model of human behavior. Insights from behavioral science are now part of economics, and people say that we should not even use the word behavior economics anymore, because economics as such has already incorporated so deeply all of these insights. The importance of beliefs in driving human motivation, whether they are based on facts or not, is also well recognized, the importance of psychological phenomena like motivated reasoning, for instance, in the formation of beliefs, or the fact that people do not update their beliefs when they are confronted with factual information that goes against some of their prior beliefs. So I think there's a lot that economics has been grappling with. The understanding of emotions, for instance, fear, or perceptions of insecurity, is something that we know is related with increase in political polarization. So people that are more fearful tend to be attracted to the extremes of the political spectrum, and obviously this is then used and instrumentalized by political leaders. So I think this is perhaps how far we have gone. We need to bring this more into the policy making world. I think this is where there is the gap. I think the gap is less on the scholarly literature, as best as I can tell, but much more that these insights have still not permeated an influencing policy dialogue and policy discussions. So we still believe, for instance, that arguing for the inefficiency and the regressiveness of fossil fuel subsidies, just putting the numbers out there, is going to lead people to accept increases in fuel prices or carbon prices, even if they are promised the recycling of these revenues. People seem to be reacting. It's very hard to implement these kind of policies. And so I think we need to do what is going beyond normal economics that the manifesto suggests in the way I described, but to bring some of these insights also into the policymaking world, and where I think we need to go even beyond what I've described already as being already part of the, at least the academic debate, is to bring the humanities. So I think we accept that we need to bring the social sciences, political science, psychology, anthropology, sociology, but I think we need to bring much more the humanities, history, philosophy. Certainly, if we agree that some of the challenges that we confront are in the domains of ethics, about what should we be pursuing, what is good in society, that's a problem that is not going to be solved with technocratic approaches. It's a problem that needs the engagement of the humanities. And so this would be my conclusion, would be to say that my invitation is to consider that the problems that we confront are human problems, are technical problems, but also human problems. And to solve these human problems, we need to bring much more the humanities. Thank you.
Grazie, allora un ringraziamento a Pedro Concesao, ma un ringraziamento anche per questa sessione di lavori a Phoebe Koundouri, Romina Boarini, Mario Nava, Jeffrey Sachs che si è collegato con noi. I saluti finali al nostro padrone di casa, idealmente il professor Bigeri, anche per una sintesi e un ringraziamento a chi è intervenuto fino adesso.
So thank you to everybody. I'm here just to make a synthesis. This is a very important moment. I was really captured by your presentations. I really enjoyed, and I wish to thank you, all of you, and Jeffrey Sachs. But first, let me try to summarize or try to bring some elements together with Pedro, which I really thanks, about our work that we are doing, that is somehow a synthesis on today. SPES is non capisco is it doesn't have a logic, but we will give a logic. Okay. So this is an idea that came out from an European project named SPES, Sustainability, Performance, Evidence and Scenario, started a few years ago and is co-linked to this session. And we invited these people because we believe that there is something we have to find. Well, Jeffrey Sachs was somehow saying about all the type of crises that we have. There are other crises, and somehow Pedro, at the end of his conclusions, was saying that is a crisis of humanity, that humanity is somehow taken out from our discussion. So this program is quite interesting, and I think it can give a good opportunity to conclude. If we want to have a new manifesto for a manifesto towards a new economy, we need to work in different areas. And the area is public consensus, which is fine, and is very important to know. Then there is the theoretical consensus, including the models that Phoebe was doing, and as well as Romina. Then the policy consensus through what Mario Nava was saying about, and data measurement system, which is about what we are going to discuss also here, and is one of the point of the manifesto. The point here is that we have an elephant. Many people are saying that we have an elephant in the room. Well, the elephant is not in the room. We already see the elephant. We already know the elephant. You were analyzing very well, Romina as well, and so on. The elephant, you will see where it is soon, because I have to be quick. So there are these consensus. And here we tried in this, in dialoguing with policymakers of the European Union, we are trying to put together some elements. And then we will go exactly in the process that is going to make a change in the future. So the point is that, as you can see, there are the 5P, the 5 pillars of the Agenda 2030, partnership, people, prosperity, planet, and peace. But these have no really directionality. It's true, we can analyze. It's true, we can say many things, and we have many indicators. But there are sustainable development goals that goes one against the other. There are synergies, but there are also trade-offs. So we take the human development perspective of the UNDP and Human Development Report Office in bringing to the people the equity, to the prosperity, the productivity, and the productivity is not general. The quality job is also the job that doesn't create problem to the people in terms of conflict. It doesn't produce pollution, negative externalities. So we have a bit to redefine what is productivity and what is also good job. Then there is the planet and the environmental side, and the partnership, which is about empowerment of people, and peace. Peace is in the center because it's so important, and it's based on human security concept, which is a concept that is based on protection, empowerment, and solidarity, not just militarization. So then we say, okay, these are the things that give a directionality to the pillars of the sustainable human development and the Agenda 2030, but who are the actors? And here it brings where humanity is. The actors are the business, the academia, the civil society and the government, as well as the natural environment. And we all are part of it. Indeed, I am a professor at the University of Florence, but at the same time I am part of the civil society. And at the same time, I do have somehow a business, although it's non-profit business, which is ARCO, which is a research center which I'm working on, and I'm the scientific director. So I have many positions. Depends on how I work in this position that make the difference. Okay, this is what they have taught to me when I was a student, and I often refuse to teach. Okay, the fact of the Homo economicus, I had difficulties. I had to tell to my professor Tani. Professor Tani is an excellent professor, and I say, well, it's difficult for me to teach something which I do not believe in. And I do not believe that we are part of an Homo economicus only. But the system that we have built, unfortunately, is based on this figure, Homo economicus. So the actors of change in this mainstream economics that we are running after is government, business, and academia. And the triggering factors are profit-seeking, utility maximization, capital accumulation. So everything, good governance, research and innovation, capital investment, are all directed to economic growth and productivity. But the productivity that can hurt our heart and can hurt ourselves can create conflict. So we are proposing and we are thinking altogether that this consensus should be more transformative. And indeed, as Pedro was saying, is based on our humanity, on the fact that we are part of the different actors. So we are professors, we are part of the civil society, and if you don't know, there are people here, And there will be a session of people coming from Mexico talking about how we are connected to nature and how tribal people tell us that we are connected, and we should believe in that. We are part of the nature, and so we are part of the system. So the point is how to direct, what has to go. Where is the elephant? My friend, the elephant is not far from us. Probably is very close to us, okay? The narrative has to be changed. The narrative has to be so strong that when we wake up in the morning, each morning, we think about how to be more efficient, not how to love more people, not how to relate more with people, okay? So this is our problem at the moment. So it's not, the elephant is there, now in the room. Now we see it, and it's not me, it's the Club of Rome, Sandrine, them that say it is there. But the point here is that we have another something that we should change. It's within us. It's not far away, okay? So this is my thing that I think capture all the elements that were said. One person, so technician as Jeffrey Sachs, was saying clearly that this is not a matter of, transition is not a matter just of technology. It's important for knowledge to know how to do. But then it's the narrative that has to be changed, which is a much more difficult part in our life, because it is about us. It's about how we live, how we relate to each other. Thank you.
Grazie, grazie ancora a tutti. Le sessioni parallele cominceranno con qualche minuto di ritardo, il tempo di un caffè, e poi proseguiremo i nostri lavori. Grazie a tutti.